Welcome to Screencleaner, the little popular magazine show about media and politics. It tries to be as educational as it's learned it is, and as fun and funny as it finds itself to be. In this show, we'll be going through every major British TV politics chat show. From some study, we'll report on the interests and attitudes of the monkeys that shape the mainstream media projection of reality. And it'll be broken up by juvenile, puerile japes. So don't go to the toilet without pausing. First, though, we'd be remiss not to bring up the week's top story. At the end of the previous week, it emerged fraudster Peter Mandelson failed security vetting for his appointment as US ambassador. A hunt in the forests brought camera crews to the PM, who launched preemptive blinks. And over the weekend, it emerged some civil servant or other, probably senior, probably disgruntled, was to blame for the whole thing. Well, I'm glad we've got that sorted out. And they all lived happily ever after. Sundays with Laura Kunnesberg usually begins with Laura shot 50 foot tall, facing a card Ghidorah twice her size, walking around her politician guests, talking about them like a tour of the Waxworks Museum. A coming this episode montage promises 3 more guests who aren't politicians, but this time they're sat behind a desk. Then a trek through a drawn land like some fictional comic book editor. A newspaper review opens up the magazine show. New segments are introduced to flashbacks to the week in news. There's usually a one-to-one interview with 1 or 2 known MPs, and these are interspersed to punctuate the main desk interview. There's typically a 12-minute feature recorded at various locations, for example, hustings, before returning to those on the fringes of politics. Camera work is fairly standard and nondescript, and a bit of shit-stirring now and again is part of the show's fuel. The Laura Kay show has swapped around producers since November, losing the women. Northern Irish senior reporter in London, Brian Hollywood, remains with Clubland's Joseph Cassidy, who used to be social media advisor to 3UK on behalf of Capita. New regulars are Paul Twin, who's been with the BBC since 2004. At the same time, he began advising on the memoirs of SDP founder Baroness Williams. Here he is in 2014 on his way to Nick Clegg's Christmas party. So he's put in campaign and election coverage, Westminster news work, assistant editing and senior broadcasting around BBC News, and helping the political editor. Last year, he left BBC Westminster for an on-site post as executive producer with Sky News before being lured back to the Beeb. Other new hire, Alex Fleming-Brown, writes for just about everyone, evidenced by the muckrack profile collating his efforts. Visitors to his LinkedIn profile will be met with the news he made Keith Starmer a cup of tea prior to his being PM. What would you do if you could go back in time, Alex? Fleming-Brown's bachelor's was in politics, but it would be his master's that was in journalism and is key to pursuing that trade. Freelancer for the Beeb and ITN before landing a contract with ITV's Peston. Then Kunnesberg in 2023. His promotion came at the end of 2025. Fleming-Brown, Twin, Hollywood and Cassidy are the main credited producers. They're occasionally joined by others, such as Flora Murray, who we'll come to in a bit. Under them, the production team, ordinarily 4 people, sometimes more, usually changing. Semi-regular is video editor Yusuf Joe Juba, one of the journalist signees of the open letter to BBC management, extremely concerned over the reporting of Israel and Palestine. The only other consistent member of the production team is London filmmaker, writer and photographer Kassara Karimi. That would seem to point to the production team being responsible for the raw, actual production. You see, making a magazine show means juggling many moving parts, but it's also liberating in the breadth your remit can let you expand to, as dictated by the format. With Screencleaner, I can talk about local issues, sci-fi, the news in brief, and 90 Seconds PMQ features were late additions, and they're among my favourites to make. Laura Kay's show does use format to lock in stability, clear things to achieve, but it feels we're sticking closely to the template of BBC party political ideology. John McAndrew is credited as executive producer, which is another way of saying he's a director of programmes for BBC News. This makes him responsible for consistency in editorial direction of BBC television and radio news programmes, including Breakfast, the 1, 6 and 10 o'clock news bulletins, Newsnight, the Today programme, PMs, Newsbeat, Radio 5 Live. He's been in the biz 25 years, but the 2022 appointment was an outside hire. McAndrew held executive positions at NBC, News International, Sky News and ITN Productions. He was also GB News' first director of news and programmes. His salary with the BBC is $225,000 to $229,000 a year plus expenses. That's compared to the non-executive director's base fee of $33,000 per year. Senior BBC television director James Waddell is a graduate of Lincoln University. His CV includes Hard Talk, the 2010 and 2015 leader interviews, the Andrew Neil interviews, This Week, Sunday AM and Newsnight. He's been with Laura Kay since 2022. Occasionally, Janet McAllen steps in for him, an Ulster University graduate with 23 years' experience in multi-camera TV and as an outside broadcast director. Editor Diana Martin joined the show in 2023 after 7 years of investigative documentary series Panorama, running the development and commissioning process. Prior to that, she was the commissioning editor for Newsnight and a senior editor at BBC Current Affairs. Martin's part of what I'm calling the 25 Club, having been with the corporation since 2001. Kunnesberg herself was ITV's first female business editor, then the BBC's chief political correspondent and first political editor. She does come from money. One great-grandparent was co-founder of the Royal College of GPs, another was a Lord and High Court judge. His brother was the British Governor-General of Nigeria. Laura's father was an investor. Part of her degree was spent in Washington, her brother a Director General in the Home Office, and her sister an oil executive for Shell. Laura's advantages in life were helped by privilege. However, most of the 20-odd producers are on the fringes of Club 25, or the 25 Club. It's a real political manager cluster. This could be less an expert thing and more an institutionalized thing, as these politicos form a self-validating echo chamber. But actually, the magazine show format makes the best of this problem, turning it into an asset. Airing on Sunday before Chicken Starmer addressed Parliament, there was some pause to the pedo Mandelson story. However, 2 days is a long time in paedophiles. There was plenty to discuss. Mandelson leaking confidential information to Epstein during Gordon Brown's government, the Act of Parliament that specifies ministers are not to be involved in the vetting process, something which might be used by Starmer to clear himself, but more likely bury himself. The civil servant, already clearly a patsy, was Sir Olly Robbins, actually permanent Under Secretary of State for Foreign Affairs of the United Kingdom. This isn't mentioned a lot, but Laura Kay's show and elsewhere does carry the narrative of people speaking highly of him, even while the Labour stooge harped on that we should wait, and paraphrased by the streamer No Justice, Keir Starmer is the victim in all this.
So I've decided to send Reform UK some mail.
So I don't want to send them actually nothing. So this one has a note. So I'm sure I wrote something. Oh, there we go. How come you choose convicted rapists, paedophiles, warmongers, murderers, and billionaires over good people who see the good in you?
Important question needs to be answered. How do you sleep at night? So allegedly each of these free post envelopes cost Reform £2.50 a pop. I've got 10 here. This one's me acting on behalf of Elon Musk. Hey, buddy, Nigel, what's all this back talk, you monger of fish? If I catch more of it, you're gone from X. I was shown an English cartoon, Danger Mouse. You look like the bad guy Baron Silas Greenback. Someone's trying to hack into my brain to hack into my. Where's the loan repayments? Don't get funny, Gordon Shumway, run over by steamroller. You went off message. You think I was paying for a cameo? The enforcement firm Jim Henson and Wiener will be coming to see you in 30 days, you limey concrete-coloured tambourine of feces. Bye, Elon Musk.
Never mind that I'm wearing a hoodie. I'm in a TV studio and that gives me authority. So I'm here with TV film production lecturer and friend of the show, PJ Hart. So, PJ.
Hello.
This episode of Screencleaner, we're looking at production and TV, and I wondered if you could help us break down what the people in the various roles actually do.
I can do my best. It's been a while since I've been active on the forefront in the trenches at the coalface, as it were, but I will do my very best.
Keep up the nodding. That's important.
Indeed.
So there's the production team, then the assistant producers, the head of production, executive producer, senior producer, yada, yada, yada.
That's right. I mean, every production will have a different bespoke production team, different roles. Those roles will do different things depending on the size of the team, the budget of the production. That's a big one, obviously, because the more people you have, the more specialized roles can be. Generally speaking, whenever I was training, BBC, Northern Ireland, NI Screen training scheme back in the day called Aim High, we were kind of brought in relatively entry level, but I think our position on most of the productions we were put onto was junior researchers. So for factual content, for like current affairs factual content, I would sort of break the team down into like your editorial side, who are like in charge of like what the actual content of the program is going to be in terms of like who you speak to, what the story is, what the locations are, and then you've got the production team who are kind of responsible for making all that happen. So on the editorial side, you would start with junior researchers. They'll be involved with finding different contributors, possibly even definitely presenting researchers to assistant producers. Assistant producers will usually be involved in going out and doing a bit of filming. These days, everybody has to be self-shooting. So you have self-shooting researchers, self-shooting assistant producers, and producer directors. So they're going out actually making the content, writing the scripts. Sometimes they're doing their own edits, things like that as well. And then on the production side, you've got production secretaries, production coordinators, production managers, and they'll be in charge of the logistics. Essentially, they'll be making sure everybody's contracted. They'll be, they'll be taking in receipts, paying out petty cash, organizing hire cars, sometimes maybe dealing with legal and clearances and stuff like that if you don't have a dedicated team. So it's really bespoke. It really just depends on what the needs of any given production are.
Okay.
You notice I avoided the executive producer, series producer. Series producer is the highest I ever made it. That was in scripted TV though. If you ask me what executive producers do, I'll just say nothing.
That was my next question. So find your future career. What do executive producers and editors do? Do they avoid getting their hands into the editing, the cutting up of film and the moving cameras about, or is there a bit of a...
So there's a kind of confusing overlap of terminology here. So when we talk about an editor in TV, you might be talking about somebody who sits beside a computer using nonlinear editing software and physically editing the film that you then finally see on TV. But there's also, especially in news, there's a concept of an editor which correlates more closely to a newspaper editor, which is somebody who decides the editorial direction of the program. So Newsnight's editor-in-chief isn't sitting down in front of Premiere Pro and cutting programs. They're deciding the overall editorial direction of that program, like what issues they should tackle, who they should talk to, what their kind of political slant is or isn't. Obviously, they're not supposed to have one, but so that role isn't a technical role in the way that editor, like, or assistant editor is if you're actually working in an edit suite. So it can get a little bit confusing. Executive producers, I mean, I guess it's easy for us to sit in the trenches and slag them off for not doing anything and for just making our lives difficult. But that is kind of their job. I mean, the buck stops with them. That's where they get paid. What they get paid, it's to kind of take responsibility for the program. So they will be feeding notes back down through the team. So they'll work gets fed up, notes get fed back down. And generally speaking, the executive producer, or there might be a team of executive producers. Quite often, the way the TV is made at the minute, it's made by an independent production company. The person who owns that production company will be an executive producer on any show that production company makes. But then their client, their buyer in that case, is a broadcaster, and somebody at that broadcaster will also have responsibility for that program because they've paid the money for it. So then, because they've paid their money, they get a seat at the table and they get to send notes back down because ultimately it's their responsibility. So the most executive producers I ever had on one project, and again, this was the scripted project, was 6. There were only 5 episodes of the series, and there were 6 executive producers. I'll not get into exactly what that is or why that was, but
thanks very much, PJ. Would you like to recommend a podcast about like fantasy, comedy, realism?
Well, as you may or may not know, Andy and I are co-hosts of the I've Never Read Discworld podcast.
That sounds great.
It's brilliant. Yeah, if you've just come to Screencleaner for all your current events, political kind of stuff that makes you stressed and anxious about the world, the antidote to that is to go read some Terry Pratchett and then listen to Andy and I talk about it, because it's much more soothing and will help you make sense of the world. Right?
At Discworld GNU.
That's us.
Political Thinking with Nick Robinson is a BBC Today podcast and simultaneously a BBC Two show. It's labelled as conversation, not interrogation, of people who shape political thinking. One-to-one interview with all the big points of sales. The Radio 4 version lasts for 40 to 55 minutes. The BBC Two version is cut to 29 minutes. Hosted by pro-conservative, anti-activist, anti-Muslim, connected to Smear and Alex Salmond, with suspicious links to far-right people.
Others decide what to cut. He says the title for this saga is Back from the Brink. Others may say it's over the edge.
You should be ashamed of yourself, mate. You should be ashamed. Shame on you, mate. Shame on you. That's the silly thing to do, man. Just be ashamed of yourself.
I'm not remotely ashamed of
Be
myself.
ashamed of yourself.
Why should I be ashamed of
All
myself?
them troops.
In his latest episode with Zach Polanski, which as it comes up again and again took months to arrange, Robinson displays narcissism, harassing, very disingenuous interrogation, and reframing slurs. Now, I love doing interviews. More often than not, they're a chance to kick back. Let your guest fill up the content requirements. If the interviewee is someone you like or are interested in, work becomes a pleasure. For next episode, I've interviewed top-tier comics creators, the Rickard sisters. Top tier, top tier. I've done interviews where I've been trying to nail an opponent, a dozen where I've tried to draw out quieter expressions. Robinson is interviewing his subjects out of a wish to hang on to their coattails and popularity. He can't quite hide his disdain of Polanski, which is going to come back and bite him in the ass. Nick's lead director is Rob Jones, BBC senior broadcast journalist of 26 years. That's about all I know. There's a Rob Hugh Jones with the corporation 35 years, who would appear to be also known as Rob Jones on thatrobjones.com. Maybe, perhaps, possibly. On occasion, Mira Thabasothi directs. The Wonder Woman podcast of 2020 cites her as live television news and current affairs director. Her links run to directing BBC World News, Newsnight, Politics Live, and The Andrew Marr Show. She's also an independent screenwriter and filmmaker. Lead senior producer Daniel Kramer is a political researcher with the Beeb 8 years, ordinarily working on audio productions. However, his journalism background prior was with The Guardian and The iPaper. Kramer's previous work includes World at One, World This Weekend, Politics Live, Westminster Hour, and analysis of the Panama Papers. He's backed up sometimes by Leela Padmanabhan, senior producer on politics in audio, in post 20 years. Has worked on the same shows as Kramer and also election coverage, Starmer's Stormy Year, and the Body Politics series. Flora Murray, named after suffragette and medical pioneer, is credited producer. Perhaps a conscience of this locked-in-place show. 5 years ago, she worked supporting playgrounds in classrooms as a special educational needs assistant before working on a production of a documentary on women-powered stories. Academic background in history and politics, completing an MA in TV journalism in 2023, she briefly interned at Sky News and elsewhere. She's been with the Beeb 2 years, producing Sunday with Laura Kunnesberg, Newsnight and Politics Live. Giles Edwards is editor, 26 and a half years at the Beeb, most of those in radio production. He's a media mentor for a group, Being the Story, aimed at bringing charities' concerns to the masses. Author of 3 political books on British and American premiers. In summary, across the board production has come up through BBC Radio, retooled easily for the one-to-one interview format, directed by institutional political staff, and I am suspect of the pressure in the Beeb to retain Nick Robinson. Lose him. He's an a-hole and replaceable.
But the reason that we changed the nature or the character of the place in which migrants first came to when they arrived in the UK was to ensure that we were weeding out those adults who are posing a real risk to children.
That's nothing to do with the Mickey Mouse mural, though, is it?
Please leave a message after the tone. When you have finished, please hang up or press the hash key for more options.
Round 1, fight!
Hi, Mr. Jenrick. My name is Niles Sharona from New York. So I've been working on this mural for my local nursery school and I wanted to get your opinion. Are all Disney characters disallowed, or is there a safe route for those that have entered public domain? I have a list of other characters that I also wanted to get your feedback on. Daffy Duck, Roger Ramjet, Captain Planet, Alvin and the Chipmunks, the Thundercats, Popeye. Oh, no, not Popeye. He was a sailor and he fought Nazis. How about Yosemite Sam, Optimus Prime, The Incredible Hulk, Rod Hull and Emu, Visionaries, Knights of the Magical Light, Muffin the Mule, Jamie and the Magic Torch, Danger Mouse, Spider-Man and his amazing friends? If you give me a call back, Mr. Jenrick, and let me know which of those are acceptable or any suggestions that you have. Thank you.
Keith Starmer appeared in an emergency session in Parliament on Monday to answer questions about Mandelson failing vetting. It was all looking very much like Starmer had sacked Sir Olly Robbins with the words, "You go out the door or you go out the window." The day's most used phrase, though, was "under the bus." There was predictably outrage. Thick racist Lee Anderson got thrown out for using the 4-letter word liar. Humanitarian Zara Sultana got the same for the same and also suspended. The suspicion of a racial element in Speaker Hoyle's actions isn't helped by the clumsy Nazi gestures. #JustStopHoyle. The don't say liar rule of Parliament is ridiculous, particularly when it's as clear as Boris that Starmer is a liar. 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 But there was much more sycophancy on show.
That he would never, ever deliberately mislead this House.
Even opposition members lining up to say that they don't doubt Keir in all of this. There were some threads suggesting why field vetting information didn't reach Starmer. That Sir Olly seems to have felt afraid to bring the information to him. Could it be Olly didn't want to be reimagined as an anti-Semite? Several times MPs said they understood why Starmer felt Mandelson was a bad choice, but what qualities attracted him to Peter Mandelson? This led to muttered 5-word answers, presumably sitting quickly to avoid being caught, offset blinking. Crucial conversation posited Starmer trying to throw Sir Olly Robbins under the bus, but there was little mention of the time-space anomaly communicated on the internet outside the echo chamber. Documents were shared from gov.uk, public domain documents, on Sir Olly arriving in post at the Foreign Office 17 to 19 days after Keith's Mandelson announcement. Well, obviously Robbins travelled back in time after he'd done in JFK, of course. I heard Sir Olly brought down the World Trade Center. So sure were Starmer's circle, I was connecting him with urban myth time traveller John Titor. I sure hope Scott Bakula can stop Olly Robbins. On Tuesday I took in Politics Live, presented by Deputy Political Editor of BBC News, Vicky Young. Young came up through regional journalism. She's been the show's host less than a year, seemingly one of the more moderate voices at that management level. The show opens with 20 minutes of 3 people on a couch, standard camera shots of whole studio, or focus on one guest speaking. There's an outside broadcast. In one I looked at, talking to residents of Hampshire about things they need against the framing device of the local elections. The 7-minute piece was followed by an interview with Anna Sarwar in a studio in Glasgow. The media seemed to have sunk on platforming him as an alternative to Starmer and the SNP, while also being open that he has no hope. It's my feeling Sarwar is their new Farage, significantly less offensive, likely to say something to go viral, as if the news media realised their mistake promoting Farage and are trying to reverse at 40 miles per hour out of a muddy dug-in. From there, it's back to the studio guests for the final 10 minutes, a political hot potato, but mostly wishy-washy nonsense trivia talk of the luxuriated. Only director, editor and producer are credited. As I've said before, there are 30, 40 people involved in this show, and we deserve transparency, and they deserve credit. Hard up for 10 extra seconds to do this is a tosser's excuse. I can manage it. Screencleaner takes a leaf out of the excellent American comedy, Community, that end credits don't need to be limited by show format. I can find no information on the director, Chris Murray, so I've used this old picture of Daniel Maxwell to represent him. Murray helms all or most episodes. The producer's role is a rotating one and filled by one of the same 4 or 5 people who also worked on it last year. Typically, they'll have some high authority. Beth Goodwin worked for Number 10 and Comms, Hugh Milbourne is part of 25 Club, and Helen Gray, also found on Debate Night, works for Mentorn. Stability also in Will Bowden, another of the BBC's 25 Club, editor of the show since September 2021. He's been linked to the various BBC election debates and EU debates too. Among his listed skills, only broadcast journalism hints at any traditional editorial employment. Most of Will's listed skills are in the language of management, team motivation, strategic leadership, target audience. That one's a bit direct. Steady on, target audience. Maybe it's out there in reprisal for people yelling, "Fire at Will!" Covering the Mandelson story, the guests are the usual apologist stooges, bibbly-sibbly comforters, and angered stripes. The production crew make time to dive headfirst into an adjacent story brought by Sir Olly on being asked to discreetly find a role for Matthew Doyle, Starmer aide and friend to a sex offender. It comes up as a half dozen questions in studio and outside with Sarwar. In summary, Politics Live is not sensational and a part relevant BBC cobweb people voicing in bubbles.
That's it.
You can call in the office of Robert Jenrick, MC Newer. We're unable to take your call, but please do leave your name, telephone number, address, and a short message, and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. Alternatively, you can email robert.jenrick.mp@parliament.uk. Thank you.
Round 2.
Hi, Honest Bob. My name is now Sir Owner calling from Balderton. So I'm all really concerned about constituency issues. In the last year, you declared £500,000 in private donations. How come you couldn't have paid £100,000 for your third home instead of conning us taxpayers to do that? Man, you're as slippery as a jar of Swafiga and not nearly as clean. All those dodgy favours for pornographer Richard Desmond. Honest Bob, do you ever jack off the videos of Putin? Maybe wipe your willy on the Daily Mail? If Oswald Mosley was still alive, would you give him a bit of mouth-to-crotch pleasure? I realise that's a bit crude, but hey, it's a language you and Reform deal with, man, innit? It's just locker room talk. Oh, it's all a laugh. Anyway, Bob, yeah. You should have my number, so I hope to hear back from you.
When Ollie Robbins faced a select committee later on Tuesday, more details came out. Pressure directly from number 10 to get clearance for Mandelson, all done at pace, or in the alleged words of disgraced propaganda agent and probably anti-Semite Morgan McSweeney, just fucking approve it. The 2.5-hour inquiry revealed pressure on Sir Olly's predecessor, Philip Barton, who left the job 8 months early. In the middle of all this, was Barton forced out? Ollie Robbins was aware of it in their handover conversations. Additional pressure to get Baron Matthew Doyle, the Prime Minister's outgoing Director of Communications, a job under Mandelson in Washington, also emerged. Given Doyle's public links to that different notorious child sex offender, Robbins pushed back here too, with success this time, and the appointment was not made.
Gotcha.
Speak English. Robert Peston is Politics Your Dad, using his still athletic frame to rap away in a rapping way. The Balliol College, Oxford educated political editor of ITV News came to prominence reporting on the financial crisis of 2008. Ex-editor of BBC News and Business and then Economics, Peston is perhaps a little bit cracked in the head, judging by his calling Boris Johnson more socialist than Castro. The centre of the show is his in-studio interviews, and sometimes remote ones. There hasn't been a new episode of Peston since the vetting story broke, on hiatus for a month now. Yet the episode from 11th of March, which I accidentally clicked on, has pedo Scandalson at its centre. A tip of a reminder of how long that this story has been going on since December 2024. Rottenness at the top permeates to the street. Pippa Carrera is more Peston's backup singer than co-host, but a key part of the broadcast with analysis and newspaper reviews. Near to the business and Peston, she's nonetheless done journalism from key proximities. Political editor at the Daily Mail 2018 to 2022, reporting extensively on Partygate and Wine Time Fridays, breaking stories and publishing photographic evidence. She got the scoop on Dominic Cummings breaking lockdown, Rishi Sunak's duplicity in dealing with healthcare, and the violent bullying by Gavin Williamson and Dominic Raab. Her husband is a senior civil servant in the Foreign Office, so we may just get a few scoops on the Star Mandelson story when Peston returns. Carrara's presence helps fill the show out and unfair the team behind the scenes, something that's key to my vision for Screencleaner. However, it's not so easy. I'm not a team. I'm one person. I can't project myself as a collective when I'm not one, which is probably the right way to think about it. It's quite tough to get people to appear on Screencleaner, pitching them successfully, poking them with reminders, poking them with fucking reminders, getting them to follow requirements. And meantime, I'm researching, writing, arranging clips and images, presenting, jumping up and down on microphones, re-recording, mixing, remixing, thumbnailing, publishing and promoting. It can be extremely draining. The lack of a steady partnership is why you might not see that and getting tongue-tied is why you might not see Screencleaner in the future. Fortunately for ITV, their Peston show doesn't have that problem. There's production secretary Verity Robbins, who appears to have been a runner and front-of-house coordinator as recently as 2024. That's according to her talent manager CV, which she'll have created and is very much incomplete. Her IMDb entry suggests promotion in 2025, over 40 Pestons. Production manager Helen Doughty came up as secretary through Bradley Walsh's quiz show, The Chase, then The Voice, a show contorting the beauty of singing into aggressive competition, before she wound up on Peston in 2022. 115 episodes, thereabouts. Production executive Alexandra Rivera-Brown replaces Joanne Austin, who was 8 years in the post. Like her predecessor, Rivera-Brown has worked on shows of more widespread appeal, ITV Daytime and Loose Women. She joined the show late February. Another move at the top is a post of head of production. Jane Smith, a powerful figure 4 decades in the industry, has been swapped out for Alice Gardner. Gardner is also from Loose Women, head of production at ITV Daytime, and producer of a few Coronation Street specials. She came on board Peston at the same time as Rivera-Brown, perhaps intended to ensure between the two of them, ITV's last non-news politics show remains accessible to a broader public. 2 assistant producers down to 1. Young Emily Wright was in post a year before being replaced by Tia Tecalti. Tecalti's been in the biz since 2020, but mostly 2024 on completing her master's in journalism. In our studies, we see this a lot. People in production don't study journalism at bachelor's level, only the advanced masters. This diversity might actually be a good thing, but ought to be taught at university in bachelor's degrees, or prior to that, in schools. Upon graduation, Tecalti was a digital content producer at LBC, an assistant producer at Sky News, and previous to Peston on Channel 5's Jeremy Vine show. Former assistant Emma Neely has been promoted recently to full producer. Her background's also in developing shows with popular appeal. She joins Angus Neil in the producer role with responsibility also as a young graduate. Remaining in post is political producer Michael Clarkson, once of GB News. Series director Barry Thomas is about to enter the 25 Club with 15 years of directing experience for the BBC and ITV, presently on year 8 of their This Morning show. This is directing, as in actually moving about cameras, figuring out where people should be standing and sitting and coming in, making up new stuff too. Series editor Kishan Korea has been with Peston since researching and proofreading his book, WTF, back in 2016. They collaborated on 3 books, and Karaya's career climb on the show has an up-ladder evidence satisfying me as not nepotism. Self-described multimedia journalist and political obsessive. Andrew Dagnall, ex-News of the World, is gone as executive producer. Laura Wilshaw, still in place, 25 Club, Political Headquarters Division. Vicky Flynn is Newish Head of Current Affairs, a television producer since the 90s, with output including This Week and election debate specials. For Flynn, the current scandal around Mandelson will be felt acutely when Peston returns, and it's felt acutely now. Flynn's career has been overshadowed as a former wife of Hugh Edwards, the news presenter guilty of holding indecent images of children. Though separated when police arrested Edwards, Flynn made a formal disclosure to the press out of concerns for his mental health and to protect their children. Peston himself took to Substack on Tuesday afternoon following Sir Olly's appearance at the inquiry. His post summarised the basic findings: that the Cabinet didn't believe Mandelson needed to be vetted, but the Foreign Office did; that Matthew Doyle was considered to replace Mandelson; and that Ollie Robbins was credible and not in post when Starmer announced the appointment with the King's official blessing. The Substack post shows Peston summarising and opinioning concisely that Robbins got the boot because he lacked the imagination to, in my words, save Big Dog. Meanwhile, an emergency session in the Commons untangled the thread of Ollie Robbins at the Select Committee. The convoluted timeline saw Ollie Robbins join the Foreign Office 17 days after Mandelson's appointment was announced. He was 17 days into the job when Mandy failed security vetting, 19 days in when he began in the post of ambassador. The Commons was sparser, quieter than the previous day. Starmer didn't show up, sending loyal Darren Jones' bucket man along to tell everyone the scandal would be met with an inquiry into who had told on them.
That there will be a full inquiry into
all of leaking. We are so screwed.
He's done it. That chinless horse fiddler, a fucklustrious PM, has opened Pandora's fucking box and called a massive steamer right into it.
By now the story was so transparent and low-hanging, even Kemi Badenoch managed to sound like a real politician. There were recurring notes raised on Morgan McSweeney being at the centre of this, and on Labour Together, the millionaire-funded think tank that started the party's political civil war to replace Corbyn with Starmer, using anti-Semitism as a fictional construct. That the same dirty tricks conflict is threatening to burn the man at the centre of it, the one that held the matches and gasoline, was perhaps inevitable and foreseeable. Also, Alliance MP Saoirse Eastwood made her third mic-dropping rage-a-thon of the week with the question that couldn't be answered.
I would say this to the Prime Minister. What was it about the twice disgraced, paedophile-adjacent, self-styled Prince of Darkness that you found so attractive to put into this plum job, not just of government, but of the United Kingdom on the world stage? What was it, Prime Minister, that appealed to you about Peter Mandelson? We still don't have the answer.
No. Hi, Vladimir Putin here. Could you send us more people? Always good to see Nigel in my hot tub. Hope Mossad don't share those pickies. Love, Vlad. There is actually a new address for Reform, which you can get from Company's House. This should go in the referred mailing session. This one just says twats. This one's a legal notice. I am writing to deliver a takedown notice as regards your current political policy shared with by Steve Bannon, which infringes upon the estate of my late client. Reform PLC has instructed post haste to adopt a different political campaign as the current model violates copyright. Lawyer for the estate of Jeffrey Epstein. I recently learned Reform UK are accepting contributions from Russian and Hungarian oligarchs. I am neither. Recognising the need for party resources, I have included 3 erasers, a small icebox, a Trust Speaker user guide, a transdimensional bookmark, and some other odds and ends. Sincerely, Coots Bank. What's with all the paedophiles? As requested, please find enclosed your complimentary CD signed Horatio Bottomley. I want some really useful backgrounds, Volume 3, and French electronic beats. I appear to be 1 envelope short, so we're going to have to make this number 11. So, onion. But also pulse. Potato. Cauliflower. Pretty sure I've spelled that wrongly. Let me know in the comments. And parsnips. Thank you, Posty. He didn't do the anti-Semitism, it was always burning. Matthew Doyle was a pedo. People finish jobs, do gobs. Englishness minus far right. I did that.
Fly our flag. Yeah. We will never let them, Mr. Speaker. Yeah.
Mandelson plot structure. I redrafted. Sorry, I'm sorry, Sir Olly, he acted alone. A tapeworm in your time stream with teeth. As you can see, I am free. Sir Olly Robbins is my friend. My friend? Olly said, cheater, creeper. There is no evidence I pressured anyone in over 1,000 years. You can't act. No Golden Globe. Cancel him, Netflix. Mandelson did a big Russian stinky pew. Now on Parliament TV, a repeat of the previous answer. You did do it. Kremlin time. Mandelson Snoopsy. Like Matthew Doyle would. Phone a pedo. You did it. He's a lord and a privy council. I am a liar. Liar, 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 liar. My constituents can't afford purple jackets. Party opposite hospital molesters. What's true? We are gods. They molest. Kindly, didn't you? It's okay. I can patronize you also. Then cheaper petrol? Don't you know? Communist. Do for London as we'll win. Oh, sweetie, I'll be at the building site after. The police wear invisibility capes. Cloaking devices banned by the Treaty of Algernon's. Piss ass there. Question time. 4 or 5 guests in a death match, one of whom may be Nigel Ku Klux Crypto. They must survive audience penetrating and undefeated gladiator Fiona Bruce. Undefeated since her role as a dragon in Terry Pratchett's Guards. QT has had fairly the same lineup of 11 senior production staff for the last year, with only a few 2026 changes. Social media by podcaster, disc jockey, Instagrammer, probably pin-up Matthew Cox of Debate Night and The Sunday Show. The production executive is still Emily Ricketts, holding the same role on Debate Night on behalf of Mentor Media. She ascended to the rank in 2022 after 11 years with the company. Also a manager and executive for Firecracker Films Productions, going on to Discovery Plus, Channel 4 and Paramount Plus. Daniel Ellis is the head of production and with QT since at least 2007. Chief guarded, as in no publicity or photos. Bare IMDb deets. She produced Derbit Meets, but 2 episodes were Richard Bacon Meets. Then I happened upon a great blog post, pubqt.wordpress.com. Told me her surname used to be Lloyd. Daniel Ellis Lloyd on Company's House is, well, huge. a director of 2 quite massive TV production companies, one of 8 officers of Avalon Promotions Limited, with a 2024 gross profit of 2 million, and 1/10 of Avalon Management Company Limited, and 1/10 of Avalon Management Group Limited, 2024 gross profit over 6.5 million. She was also linked to Residence Property Management Group, 91 Fernhead Road, which might be a past address or a nod to Norman Wisdom's birthplace. Assistant producer Ramsey, Radio, BT, remains in place. 4 years at Mentorn this summer. Ramsey writes the rejection letters if you don't get into the audience because you're the wrong sort of racist. His colleague, Angus Harron, has moved on. He's a wandering man. He's with the BBC in Belfast, so I'll watch what I say. He's been replaced by 2 new assistant producers. Kitty Dry first served as a runner and a researcher. She joined the business in 2021, working for Firecracker Films, Pioneer Productions, and Mentorn, all 3 subsidiaries of Tanopolis. Dry seems young with little experience. This is a common criticism of hires at that level. Her ascent from runner to researcher to assistant producer was relatively quick. The other is Alice Black. Her Master's Award was followed by working as a lowly runner, but also casting assistant, camera assistant, researcher, casting researcher, development researcher, senior researcher, AP assistant producer, development AP, casting AP, web content AP, archive AP, welfare AP, and black video edits, image designs, writes and edits, copyrights, fact checks, and has a tuned-in understanding of how to do social media. She literally seems to have the entire skill set for a whole TV show crew. A genuine artist, an outlier, impressive, inspiring, too good for the show that platforms racists, surely. Top it off that she's a rock musician for bands Sister Ghost and Venus in the Lake, and richly active in the Art for Communities charity sector. Currently managing director of Girls Rock Glasgow. This is a sort of breath of fresh air you'd be more likely to see like with drama or comedies programs, maybe sci-fi, certainly the arts. It's heartwarming to see Black, a young, hardworking creative, dutifully rewarded in a BBC semi-managerial role. Her defining works on TV include the documentary series Imagine, which featured Russell T Davies, Dawn French and Jennifer Saunders, as well as Traitors and Celebrity Traitors, which people seem to like. BT, Dry, Harron and Black answer to producer Anna Haynes, of whom we've no work updates. I can't help reflecting on my report on Haynes' personal instability last year. A news clickbait promotional campaign on her career and a press pass to Parliament expired. An instability very emphatic of question time itself. However, for executive producer Nikolai Zhentchev, this month marks his 20th year with the BBC. He's Mentorn's Director of Current Affairs, running Debate Night and many other shows. And then there's Executive Editor Daniel Maxwell, who may be the most northernmost team member over in Edinburgh. He's the BBC's politics editor. Again, we find his age gap. Yes, there's still a lot of producers there, less than 5 years. And then there's an experience gap of people who've been there for over 20 years or more, very few in between. It's uncertain how much of Zhentchev and Maxwell's salaries are paid for by the State of Israel, but it's clear that rogue state is not contributing to the cost of the TV licence. On Thursday's show, Ladders Up Bruce and the Question Time team found the most useless people in Scotland. Offald, Sewer, Fiddler Finlay, Cole Blatherton, and put them in with 2 women, independents. The survivors were SNP's Cabinet Secretary for Housing, Mary McAllen, and Gillian McKay Scottish Greens co-leader. The show included hot topics like advertising for oil conglomerates, right-wing disabled crushing, and then in the darkest of sulphuric cracks, Starmer is confronted by the audience.
Very briefly, you talk about the economy, but the UK government blocked £1.5 billion of investment in the Highlands, and you argued national security. You were quite lax with national security when it came to Peter Mandelson, so I'm wondering how that balances.
But that was pretty much it for the paedophilia. Yes, orders had come down from on high, and the press were bored with their new story, having prepared script notes for a different one. I'd intended this series of Screencleaner to be election coverage, and Starmer's diddled that and all. Eventually, we got into conflicting gossip of the Labour Reform Pact to get the SNP out. Also, Tory Russell Finlay trotting out Northern Irish loyalist nonsense about
Marie's not going to get a fair crack of the whip, and she needs to.
The SNP. This is great.
So Kurt's question is, what would it take for the UK?
He probably should be in a psychiatric ward while they perform checks for months. Yes, it seems from all the evidence I've looked at, Question Time exists in a state of delusion. From the race to the bottom, enabling Nick Griffin, Nigel, Boris, and now Keith Starmer. As long as the people making it think they're on the right track, it'll continue to facilitate nasty, vile humans and policies. The producers will never apologise for the mistakes of the past, which make themselves felt in the present, and so excuse them. It can never comfortably go moderate, because it will always be pulled back to its worst excesses. Maxwell Genchef and Ellis Lloyd put in many years' work pushing the envelope on the disgusting Brexit and Reform UK. When, if they gain self-realisation, we hope, well, they need to steer QT a hard left turn to make it centrist. In the meantime, key political coverage belongs to online outfits like Navarra Media, Turn Left, No Justice, Kevin Logan, and actually a lot of others. And that's all from Screencleaner. Oh, what do you mean Newsnight? Ruddy hell. Okay, let's make it quick. In the episode I watched from Wednesday, Newsnight was hosted by sports teacher Victoria Antoinette Derbyshire, sweaty losing a race to Tucker Carlson. There was a 5-minute interview with former US Special Envoy. They're in demand this news week. Though this time the subject is Donald Trump's setting off of Ragnarok. Nick Nicholas Watt presents letters from readers, well, MPs, but they're watching. Watt reported in Northern Ireland for The Guardian and Observer and stepped in as Newsnight's political editor, replacing Allegra Stratton. She wasn't cut out for media work as it happened. At the 8-minute mark, Derbyshire interviews Liverpool Labour MP Dan Carden. Carden identifies as a socialist. 8 minutes later, Newsnight's Faisal Islam in an interview with AI evangelist and funder Rishi Sunak, who assures us everything's fine. Islam is BBC News' economics editor. Privately educated, he comes from reporting on trading bankers and Gov-approved arms dealers. Unsurprisingly, Sunak's given an easy ride and excused the smell of sulphur it emits. That's a 12-minute interview.
And a longer version of that will be on YouTube.
Oh, I must rush over there. The show rounds up with a newspaper preview. There are 8 names associated with studio production, which we don't have time to get into. Interestingly, they've plumbed for a planning editor rather than a producer. Louis Harris White is formerly assistant editor, rising up through journalism. A lot of election coverage, The Andrew Marr Show, Daily Politics, with Newsnight since 2019. Nice LinkedIn page design there. Programme editor James Waddell, who we looked at in his role on Kunnesberg as senior TV director. Deputy editor Liz Rawlings started as part of BBC's journalism trainee scheme in 2012 in Scotland. Senior broadcaster with Daily Politics 2014 to 2018, joining Newsnight as producer following that. Programme producer Jack Hunter, Today Programme Student Journalist of the Year, awarded with the Gibbs Prize from Oxford University for getting the highest marks. Jack interned through various Tory papers, mostly doing journalism for the radio with The World Service and The World Tonight. He joined Newsnight December 2025. Executive editor Jonathan Aspinwall is most definitely 25 Club, starting with BBC Radio Merseyside in 1997. 7 years on the BBC's Rural Affairs unit. He'd also produced for Richard Bacon from Salford, put in a few years globetrotting for the BBC Asian Network, winning an award for the Stephen Nolan programme. This in a period where Nolan was platforming noted loyalist provocateurs like Willie Fraser and Jim Dowson, men of violence. But this doesn't seem to bother Nolan, Aspinwall, or the corporation. In that case, can I have an award for pooping in my pants? In 2021, Aspinwall moved to television. He was acting Big Cheese for Laura Kay and Newswatch before stepping in April 2024 to run the journalism racket on Newsnight. Just time for the news in brief. Donald Trump has threatened the sovereignty of the Falkland Islands this week. Trump said he did it to get RC with Tina. The UK assisted dying bill collapses when the House of Lords simply failed to pass it. The reason given was that they ran out of time. I hope that's not a euphemism. Shoplifting is a newest media trend. Exaggerated accounts of prize-winning thieves are all the talk of the day. A gang with 30 trolleys stole 180 employees from Tesco. Another group made off with Asda's clothing brand, George. And under cover of darkness, a whole Sainsbury's store was stolen and is believed to be fobbed off on street corners for half the price. England is suffering a severe shortage of public toilets. Some restrooms are overcrowded as right-wing turds bum in with their hopes of filming trans people using them. We at Screencleaner have always found urination porn to be one of the oddest genres. We don't care for it. And civil servant Ollie Robbins, reported to be working with Iran, captaining the fleet blocking the Strait of Hormuz. That's all from Screencleaner for now. Give us a like, comment and subscribe, and come back and see us again. Bye!